No way! Phreak with a new patch 14.22 preview.
What's up, fellow gamers? Phreak here.
What's up, fellow gamers? Phreak here. Where is your hair? Phreak. Where did his hair go?
What's up, fellow gamers? Phreak here. I'm the design lead of Summoners Rift Team's live pod, and I'm here to talk to you about patch 14.22, going live to a server review in about 1 week's time. All right, we got some topics to talk about. One is an overall, I guess we'll call it a balanced topic, that the shorthand or metaphor I'm going to use for this is taxes and subsidies. So we'll talk about that in a little bit. How the bounties update has landed so far and what we're going to be doing in the near future. In this patch is a somewhat structural update to mid lane and some items that mid laners often use. Small update to some AD carry items, and then the just normal, very small scope buffs and nerfs with the larger scope ones near the top of each subheading. Okay, so let's talk about the idea of taxes and subsidies, why this is a metaphor I'm going to use. So I already made a video a couple months ago, it's pretty popular, around having an objective measurement of win rate by using mastery adjusted win rates. That if we measure how well relatively experienced players are doing, we have a pretty solid objective understanding of how strong champions actually are. And this is how we can pretty faithfully claim that champions like Aurora and Cassante and Hwei are really, really good, even though their win rates are below 50% in almost every MMR bracket.
What? Wait, you're telling me you're telling me that Cassante is strong? I don't believe that.
It's because most players are bad at them. Most players just aren't actually extracting the power from the champions. Despite that fact, players can feel how good they actually are, because generally speaking, it seems like players can feel the potential of a champion. And one thing I brought up in that video as a subjective measure is this aqueous version of agency. Kai'Sa is my example of this, where just using mastery adjusted win rates, Kai'Sa's not actually that hard to learn because she has no unintuitive skill sets the way that like a Singed or a Zoe or an Azir or a Bard make you relearn how to play the game, and does have very long mastery curves for the champion itself. Kai'Sa's pretty straightforward. There's basically one decision point around.
Alright, we're playing with Phreak in the background.
It's not a problem. It's not an indictment of Kai'Sa, but it means that, like, well, if you only use objective measures of power and just high mastery win rate, Kai'Sa looks weak. I don't think Kai'Sa's actually weak.
Playing versus
so you have
here.
to start delving into fairly subjective measurements. Like, you're just not going to find a formula or
Trundle is decent matchup, honestly.
You're like, I for sure
it can
know
be hard, but
this champion is high agency or low agency or whatever else is needed. I think fairly compelling lever here, or axis or view or lens here, is actually just simple champion popularity. This is the fact that, hey, if Graves is exactly mathematically balanced, but is in basically every single game, does he feel overpowered? Does it feel like Graves is dominating the metagame? Does it feel like he's dominating League of Legends? Should we slightly, and I'm talking like 0.5% win rate, maybe 1% win rate, should we tax very popular
I don't necessarily think you should look at win rates.
Like they take over the games, and this might just be actually Graves is a high agency jungler. That's where the tax should come from. Or you could say, yeah, when Jax is pretty good, he's all you see. We see this for Kai'Sa, we see this for Ezreal.
Jax.
Maybe they should be taxed again under 1% win rate, but we'll tax him by 0.5% to make room for other junglers. Again, Lee Sin, another champion who can comfortably sit with a sub 50% win rate and is still a top 4 jungler, feels very strong, doesn't seem to need the objective win rate to get there. I know I'm retreading some of the things I've said earlier in the prior video, but the point here is that ultimately win rate has to end up being zero sum. Right? Every champion times their pick rate has to eventually end up at 50%, because 5 champs win and 5 champs lose in every game of League of Legends. So for every champion you tax by 0.5 or 1%, like maybe a Graves or a Lee Sin or whatever, someone gets that win rate elsewhere. Good examples of this are Taric. I don't think anyone thinks Taric is OP. He's got a high win rate. He's had a high win rate for a very, very long time. No one seems to care, and you can try to quantify this in whatever way you want, but it's not just because he's relatively easy. His mastery adjusted win rates are quite high. They're among the highest for supports in League of Legends.
Because Taric players are the goats.
No one seems to think he's too strong. He gets the occasional pro pick, and it doesn't tend to go very well. And Well, he is one of the champs who seems to be able to receive a win rate subsidy, and it's fine. And I'm going to, generally speaking, start talking about this more because I think, and again, the inputs here can very often be quite aqueous and not obvious what you're really supposed to do.
Why is this guy not taking a lot of damage?
But the
I've
end
done so
result
many
is
Qs
that
on him.
in order to make a game that you all think is fairly balanced and fun to play and has a variety of experiences and that you are allowed to pick what you want to pick, some level of taxing and subsidizing champion win rates appears to be correct here. And so, FYI, that is a lens that we are pretty happy to use. Again, the
Fuck this guy.
here are like 1% win rate in many cases, especially when it's towards a popular champion, because for every like 10 Graves picks, there's like 1 Ivern pick. Guess what? You can tax Graves 0.1% win rate and subsidize Ivern 1% win rate. And so you don't have to go very far to make room for this, but allows you to.
I kind of lost. I don't really know what Phreak is talking about. He's talking about taxes. I don't.
Just basically explaining
lost me, I don't
this
know.
is a lens I'm going to start using when talking about the kind of stuff, and that this is kind of the thought process behind it, that basically creating the balance state that makes sense for all of you involves taxing and subsidizing win rates even after doing an objective measurement. Okay, on to how bounties land and what we're doing in the future. They are mostly working fine. Nothing is really broken here. There are some minor things. This was a mistake on my part for picking the wrong tuning here. Bounties didn't visually show on the scoreboard, or don't visually show on the scoreboard until they get up to 150. You can have a bounty on your head already, but it won't show if you're at 149 gold bounty on your head. You get a triple kill, you got 140 gold on your head, it won't show a bounty. That's a mistake. You just type in the number, and that's when it decides to show on the scoreboard. It just suppresses
That's all
it
good,
visually
Phreak.
until
Don't
you're
worry
past the
about it.
threshold. That's changing from 150 to 100 this patch, so much like pretty much most versions of old bounties, though I believe CS managed to put you at 50 before. We're picking a threshold at 100. We still do round your visual display to the nearest 50. It might be we should show it 75 and show you in increments of 25, because though your bounty accumulates granularly, I don't think anyone actually really wants to see a bounty of 136 and feels like they got some new information here. So there is some level of rounding that we should do just for cleanliness, but we hid too much information, and so players feel like they don't have a bounty despite the fact that they have a pretty meaningful one. Again, mistake on my part. We are doing an update to
okay, Phreak.
the visuals of bounties next patch to make them show more often, basically. We are expecting to do some tuning on the bounties themselves for 14.23. There are things that I want to do to objective bounties and things I want to do to champion bounties. Though we have the lever for devaluing champ bounties and losing team, this lever appears to be a little bit too weak, and so we can happily tweak this and move it forward and have these suppressed harder. Essentially, we can only play so many games, right? We played the bounties for a couple of months, and let's say we played 3 games every day for 5 days a week for 2 months. That's under 100 playtests, unless I've really griefed my math here. Not a lot of games. That was instantly blown out of the water the second the game went live to all of you. And so, yes, there are some tunings. I kind of did pick relatively safe numbers at the start here, and now that it's gone live, we have a lot more data. Cool, we can start doing bigger things and pushing farther here. So the rules updates are in, right? Recalculating how it cares about gold and XP and dragons and turrets and void grubs. Those are like functionally in some ways new mechanics. Let's make sure they don't break. Let's pick somewhat similar numbers.
It's impressive how fast he talks
and then,
without like
the point here is
no
that
stuttering. He doesn't have to like think.
Because it's not hard to have a champion receive
He's
a
so
balance
very
update,
fluent.
and within 2 days you have a lot of data on how many games they're winning, how many games they're losing, what items they're buying, how well those items are performing, and you get a really good picture on an individual champion. And it is not hard to spend 30 minutes of work to retune a champion, to move their win rate by 1 or 2% in a certain direction, early game, late game, gold scaling, level scaling, who knows what, durability, damage, you know, whatever it's going to be. That's really, really easy. Having a sort of fair measurement of how is the game snowballing, how are bounties doing, like, yes, you can see like individual games and whatnot, but the end result is it just requires a lot more time, a lot more data, and this means that functionally doing meaningful bounty tuning work takes 2 patches, because we need enough data to say, here is what 14.21 actually feels like, here's how it's actually playing out in players' hands. Okay,
If I were to give my opinion on what it feels like, I feel like
that just takes more time, it takes more consideration, and again, we want the wealth
getting a
data.
bounty,
So
getting a bounty,
we'll do some tuning again,
going from
probably
300 to 450 is really hard.
Let's move on
but
from
once
this.
you reach 450,
We are making
you
some changes
increase
to
your bounty
the
very easily after that.
structure of mid lane. The
It's like
primary
getting
one
your
is walking
first
back
bounty
roughly
can be
half of the
hard.
change
Like you
that
have to
was
farm
made last year around
and
minion wave
kill
crash
a
time.
lot
So back
to get
in
your first
2023, one
bounty.
thing we
But then
were
once you hit your first
really
bounty,
concerned
then you
about
can very easily
was
increase it.
the extreme level of ditching mid lane to go dogpile bot lane that was happening at the beginning of last year. And so a change we made was to speed up the side lane minions so that they would crash at the same time on the game clock as mid lane minions, so that if you're playing Talon or Zed or whatever, and you're able to go crush your minion wave in the span of 4 seconds, and you ran towards bot lane, okay, 4 seconds plus the 10 to walk or whatever, by that point in time, the bot lane had probably also crushed their wave and could have backed off.
They're changing
and not had
minion
to, like,
wave
cannon
management
or whatever
thingy.
in case of the
It
roam.
changes for for side lane as well.
When, of
top
course,
lane,
they were
right?
desynced, it was like,
Changed
well,
a
you
lot,
crushed your
actually.
wave, you walked to bot lane, and the wave was just meeting that second, and so guess
There
what?
is a trick
We're
I
trying
use
to fight
almost
for the
every
wave
single
to get
game
any
that's
CS
gonna
and
be changed
Talons
then.
here, and
I can tell you
I also
guys
run
about
for
it this
Flash, I
game.
have a Pulverize, right? And we think that went a little bit too far. Now, we actually like that, you know, the 1 through 6 is still pretty locked off. There's a reason why the choice here is to make minions slowly get less of that side lane move speed buff, so that wave 2, they're crashing at the same time. If you're going to do a mythical level, you know, second wave roam, like your Huhi playing Aurelion Soul at MSI, that still waves minions at the same time. Probably not going to happen nearly as well. But as time goes on, every single wave, those side lane minions get slower and slower and slower, and that time between mid lane crashing and side lane crashing gets longer and longer and longer until it hits the exact same it is on live at 14 minutes, where there is no rule in place anymore. And so the point here is to create some extra texture to mid lane. Hey, maybe you're the kind of mid laner that can actually roam on the 5-minute wave desync, and maybe you're the kind of mid laner who can only roam on the 10-minute wave desync or something, and you have this sort of slight easing into, hey, by the way, the map's opening up, which I think overall, mechanically, very clever, very cool stuff. And the point is simply to say that we do think that the strategic, or at least one of the core
Does that mean roaming mid laners will be buffed?
they have access to the entire map. Right? They are close to enemy red buff, close to their own jungle, close enough to the side lanes that they expect to want to move out and go interact with the rest of the map. This is just a core strategic thing that mid laners have access to via the structure of the map. And I think it's fine, and you know, generally speaking, we agree on the Riot side that playing into that to some degree makes sense and is a good thing. And so that's something we're doing here. Next point is we are making a very small nerf to
really bad Q. That's a kill right there.
Default the best summoner spell here for AD carries in bot lane. They don't go ghost anymore. We'd like that balance to be a little bit closer, so that AD carries aren't always walking around with 300 bonus health, which makes them quite hard to assassinate, of course. I had hoped that some mid laners would be willing to run barrier. We don't seem to see it all that often, unfortunately, though I think the rune is fine. Ultimately, though, bring it down a little bit, which means assassins will have a little bit of better time killing these champions, but also some of them will switch back over to Ghost or decide the opportunity cost against Cleanse is low enough now, or whatever else, where the barriers themselves will be a bit weaker, but also they'll run against barriers less often. And so, yes, the point of an assassin is to one-shot you. This is how this class works. We need to cater to that. We need to make sure that they can do their job. It is your job as a squishy to be able to play around that or wait them out, because if they're just sitting in bot lane tri-brush or whatever, they're losing a wave if they don't act. And if you're under tower, they're losing a wave. You lost half a wave, lost an entire wave. Your mid laner's killing turret plates. It's all going to be fine in the end. And some of this is going to require you to play strategically
backseating every
some of this,
carry
of course, you'll get
player.
screwed by your teammates not feeling properly, which will also happen in the game. League of Legends is a complex game with a lot of interwoven parts. That's just how it goes. On the AD Assassin Pacific side is Opportunity and Yomu's Ghostblade. They're basically trading stats. So Yomu's is losing 5 AD and gaining 4% move speed. Opportunity is losing 4% move speed and gaining 5 AD. And the very smooth brain take is, wow, if you buy both items, nothing has changed. That's very silly. Most champions don't buy both items. Most champions either want a bunch of burst and buy Opportunity, or want to roam a bunch and buy Yomu's. If that was what you wanted, they're better at that job. If you are good at itemization, and I hope that most of you Assassin players are, these items are now better for you for what they're already trying to do. This is functionally a strict buff to Assassin itemization. Of course, not all assassins are buying these items, and I guess some of them maybe really wanted a halfway between item that gave them some burst and some mobility. I guess it's kind of not there for you. Yomu still does have 55 AD and 18 lethality. It's got plenty of damage, but it's definitely the go fast assassin item now, and generally speaking, having items that have stronger specific purposes, a positive thing for the game overall. Another thing about this, though, is that in the nearest future, we are... I mean, this is probably talking about it a little bit too early, but we talked about it some today. I'm pretty sure we're going to start working on it in the very near future.
I did not need to
deeper
do
look
that.
into melee versus ranged champion dynamics is something I brought up earlier, which was that, though I thought at the time the 12.10 durability update made sense. They wanted to slow down combat pacing. It was very effective at doing that. There was some collateral damage, things like assassins being not viable, and there had to be some very quick pivots to make that work. There were small. Then we had at the beginning of 2023, we had a bunch of AD carry supports because when everyone gained 70 health, suddenly you couldn't burst someone out. So all they wanted to do was right click you because there wasn't a point to play Talon or Blitzcrank or whatever because they were too tanky. And we're in a spot right now in generally speaking, the mid lane sphere, but also in the top lane, where melee range dynamics are mostly that melee champions have to sit there and suffer and rely on Dorn Shield and Second Wind and Fleet Footwork and just sit at 25% health, maximize sustain, just don't die, and then eventually we get to level 6, level 9, whatever. They finally outscaled the AD carry who's just right-clicking them in lane. Hopefully, fingers crossed, you know, let's go. And of course, if you're a generic solo queue player, those champs are still squishy enough that, like, for the most part, Tristana and Corki and whatnot have generally never actually had really good solo queue win rates. Lucian, etc., etc. Turns out when you're Chovy, you're pretty good at this kind of stuff, and so you can actually push your leads all the way. Anyway, the point here is we're going to be taking a pretty sharp look at what we want these melee versus ranged matchups to actually play out as. Obviously, not all of them are going to be bursting you. Cassante is not going to be able to reach Smolder in lane, ever. That's still going to be a counter matchup. That's not going to change. But what does Jax, what does Aurelia, what does Akali, what does Sylas do in these lanes? Should it be a little bit more tilted toward them bursting out, a little bit less of them sustaining through it? Things to look at, things you're going to think about, and we're going to hope to have some changes to make 1v1 melee range matchups play out in more interesting and engaging manners overall, is generally speaking the goals here. Alright, we of course also have some changes to AD carry items. Really, it's Static Shiv and Yuntal Wild Arrows. So Shiv is basically
Yuntal Wild Arrows, no one buys that shit. This is the worst item.
Design quality is going to be the phrasing here. I'm not going to do the work here, so I can only paraphrase all the thoughts and considerations the designer went through, because I don't know every single thing he thought about here. But generally speaking, the goals were, hey, the generic wave clear item you buy shouldn't randomly chip the opposing lane champions. This is not what this item is for. You shouldn't randomly be chipping them. Okay, I buy that. The second one is, hey, this item shouldn't just like randomly trigger 1,000 damage across every team fight. That's not really the core AD carry thing, is like random surges of damage across the entire enemy team. Yeah, also
looking for killer.
Also, he didn't like, I think this is more debatable, but I think it's fine. He didn't like that there were these optimizations where it's like, you kill a minion, you trigger static shift, and you're like, wait,
he's dead.
I need to wait for my item cooldown, let it tick down. Okay, now last hit the minion. Like,
whoa!
I have to do these like,
bolo.
sort of moves back and forth hitting the wave because I want to maximize the number of Shiv procs. I can understand if you think that that is a desirable thing for the item. This wasn't like unanimous, but we don't design by committee. The designer owned this project, and you know, he went with it, and I thought it was fine that we built here, so it's in the game now, or going to be in a week. So Shiv's new passive, because both Electroshock and Electrospark are basically ripped out of the game, they are different now. What Static Shiv now does is it's on vaguely an Energize-like cooldown cadence. It is your first 3 attacks will each shoot 5 target chain lightning. That means, and the cooldown starts at like 20-something seconds. And what that means is that basically you buy Static Shiv, you're like level 7 or 8 or whatever, and the wave meets, and unless you want to literally not last hit the first 2 minions or like only use spells on them, you will hit the wave. It will hit 5 out of the 6 minions or 5 out of the 7 minions. Over your first 3 attacks, maybe you kill the first minion with attack 1, so now on attack 2, you're hitting the second minion, which, by the way, still means you're hitting only the 5 minions left in the wave. And so you're, generally speaking, not going to chip the enemy champions when last hitting on the wave. Cool. This cooldown resets on champ takedown, so instead of the Electrospark hit everybody, you just get your 3 attacks.
Oh
back.
my god, shut up!
Of this item
shut
is
up!
Very similar in terms of wave clear. It is up every wave. In fact, it'll help you last hit that first minion, so if you...
He never takes a break. He just keeps talking. Is it edited? Is the video edited? Or can he actually just permanently talk like that for an hour in a row? Like, how do you even do that? How do you even think of how do you even think of enough words to constantly talk for a whole hour without any breaks? Like, I need to think before I speak. I guess it's... I guess, yeah, he was a caster, true. Kinda his job.
"42 months watching the Messier League. You go balls."
He literally reads off of a script. I don't think so. Whatever it takes. Whoa!
Faces of the slain.
5-5 is actually a very good game for Baus. I haven't really been focusing much. I guess I'm doing alright. Getting carried by my jungler though, hard. Feels good getting strong-sided. Freest game ever. Oh, I'm so stupid. Ooh. No, don't even think about it. Oof. You don't win this Ezreal. What the fuck is that sound? Play Swain, please. I think I might play Jhin again. That Jhin game I played yesterday was so fun. I wanna play it again. Whatever it takes.